Please take a moment to enjoy this gripping, suspenseful, and mysterious story. But first, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment sharing the lesson you took away from it. The teacup was still warm in my hand. The almond cookies I had baked the night before sat untouched on the porcelain plate. It was now 7 p.m., the exact hour that, for the past 15 years, Thomas would walk through the door with a familiar sigh and a smile meant only for me. But tonight, the door didn't open, and it never would again. I sat still, staring at the lock. A part of me still hoped to hear the sound of the key turning, the echo of his footsteps on the wooden floor, the way he used to say my name in that deep, comforting voice. But all that remained was silence, thick, heavy silence that seemed to seep into every wooden crack, every bone in my body. My name is Vivian Carter, and I used to believe I had the kind of marriage most people dreamed of. Thomas, calm, successful, always on time, always bringing flowers on Sunday mornings, and never once letting me worry about bills or insurance. We didn't have children, but I never felt like anything was missing. He was my partner, my anchor, the piece of the puzzle I thought would always fit, until he was gone. A heart attack, the doctor said. His tone was gentle, professional, almost rehearsed. A massive myocardial infarction. He passed quickly. I nodded, pretending I understood. But how could you possibly understand when the person you love most in this world just disappears? The funeral felt like a fog. Strangers' faces, hollow condolences, hugs that were either too tight or too staged. I stood frozen until Rachel, my younger sister, arrived, reeking of perfume too sweet to bear, hugging me just a bit too long. "I'm so sorry, sis," she whispered, her voice like cotton. Thomas was like a brother to me. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was something in her eyes, not grief, but expectation. That evening, she poured herself a drink in my kitchen, glass in hand, avoiding my gaze. I know it's not the best timing, but Thomas once lent me some money. I was hoping we could settle it now, since you're the one handling things. I turned sharply. "What money?" She shrugged. "Oh, I guess he never told you." My heart clenched. I wandered the house all night, touching every object like it might whisper to me the truths I'd missed. And then I saw them, Thomas's keys, still lying on the entryway table like always. But one key was different, longer, older, odd-shaped. The key I once asked about, and Thomas had simply smiled and said, "Just some old place, honey. You wouldn't like it." And I believed him. I never opened it. Until now. The garage was nearly a 30-minute drive from my house, tucked inside an old industrial zone where concrete buildings had faded with time and moss grew between the cracks in the pavement. It had once been a bustling workshop district. Now, it was nothing but rusted signs swaying like dying breaths and wind slipping through steel doors. I had never been here, not once in 15 years of marriage to Thomas, even though every Thursday morning, without fail, he would say, "I need to check on something at the old place." I never questioned it, because I trusted him, because it never crossed my mind that he might be hiding anything. The key felt heavy in my hand. When I slid it into the lock, it let out a soft screech, the sound of old metal being awakened after too long. The door gave way with a groan. The air inside struck me immediately, the scent of rust, of dust, and something else I couldn't place, like memories decaying in silence. In the dark, I fumbled for the light switch. And then, the fluorescent light flickered a few times before blinking fully to life, casting pale light onto the opposite wall, where I thought I was staring at a museum, or more accurately, a shrine to a hidden life. Every wall was covered. Photographs, maps, receipts, charts, handwritten notes. I couldn't breathe, and among it all was Thomas. Not the Thomas the first knew. Not the well-dressed man with neatly pressed ties and the gentle smile he wore when I poured his tea. The man in these photos was someone else entirely. Younger, rougher, wearing jeans and old shirts, hair tousled, eyes gleaming. In nearly every photo, he stood beside a woman I had never seen before. She was beautiful, dark-haired, sharp-eyed, and undeniably close to him in a way I had never seen him be with me. Some pictures had 3 people: Thomas, the woman, and a young man, tall, around 30. A family. There was no mistaking it. My hands trembled as I turned one photo over. His handwriting stared back at me. Isabel and Logan, August 2024. I froze. August. This August. I remember that day, clearly. I had stayed home, cooking Thomas's favorite dinner, lemon roasted chicken with cilantro. He had called to say he'd be late, meeting a potential client. But in this photo, he was on a grassy field, sitting beside Isabel and Logan. They were laughing, smiling. Whole. My knees gave out. I had to grab the metal table for support. On the table were stacks of documents. I skimmed through them. Bank statements, contracts with foreign companies, none of which I recognized from anything Thomas had ever told me about his work. And then I saw it. A cream-colored folder bearing the logo of a hospital. Crescent Heart Institute. Bold black letters. Ischemic heart disease, stage 3, high risk of sudden cardiac arrest. He had known. He knew he was dying. And instead of telling me, he had spent his final days here with them. I staggered back, hand over mouth. The photographs stared down at me, as if demanding I accept the truth. The man I had loved was never fully mine. I was still standing there, in the room my husband had secretly built, my heart pounding wildly, like I had just realized I was nothing more than a side character in my own life. I didn't know how long I'd been in the garage. 10 minutes? An hour? Everything felt frozen. Time, air, even the pain tightening in my chest. Until I heard footsteps. Soft, hesitant. Not the kind of footsteps someone makes when they're in a hurry, but the kind made by someone who doesn't want to be heard. I spun around. In the doorway stood the young man from the photos, Logan. Tall, sun-kissed skin, dark hair slightly tousled like he'd just driven a long distance. His eyes, God, those eyes. They were Thomas's. Unmistakably so. Painfully so. He stopped, one hand resting lightly on the doorframe. "Vivian Carter," he asked, his voice deep, steady, like he'd rehearsed that line 1,000 times. I didn't answer. I wasn't even sure I was still Vivian Carter. The woman he had called by name had crumbled not long ago. "I'm Logan Myers," he said, stepping forward slightly. "Thomas Carter was my father." Every sound vanished. The wind, my heartbeat. I wanted to say something. A denial, a question, a scream. But all I could do was stand there, gripping the edge of the metal desk like letting go would send me tumbling into nothing. Logan didn't come any closer. He kept his distance, like he was afraid I might break. "You know who I am?" I finally managed to ask, my voice no stronger than a thread. "I've known for a long time," he said. "I knew my father had another life, a wife, but he never gave me the details. He kept everything very separate." I sank into the old wooden chair, not because I wanted to, but because my legs simply couldn't hold me up anymore. "And your mother?" "Isabel?" I asked. His voice trembled slightly. "My mom passed away last year. Car accident." I looked down at the piles of documents before me, photos, files, receipts, proof of a world I had never been allowed to enter. Then I looked up at Logan, the son Thomas never mentioned, flesh and blood of the man I once believed was mine alone. "Why today?" I asked. Logan reached into his backpack and pulled out a worn stack of papers, the edges slightly frayed. He handed them to me. "It's a will, an unfinished one. My father gave it to me 2 weeks before he died. He said the official version would go to you. But this was the backup. For both of us." I took it, hands trembling as I flipped open the first page. And when I saw Thomas's familiar handwriting stretching across the paper, I knew the truth was only just beginning. I read each line of the handwritten will as if tracing dried bloodstains left behind on cold stone. Thomas's handwriting, neat, steady, confident, looked nothing like a man preparing to die. And somehow, that made my skin crawl even more. In that unofficial draft, he divided his investments and personal assets and mentioned Logan as a beneficiary, not like some hidden illegitimate child, but as someone fully recognized. My name still appeared throughout most of the document, but it was accompanied by one chilling note. Access to remaining documents. Office, 14th floor. Code linked to gift for V. I froze. Gift. I remembered the sapphire necklace he gave me the night before he died. A velvet blue box, a kiss on the cheek, and the whispered words. You're the only one. I believed him then. I wasn't so sure now. I lowered the paper, lifting my gaze to Logan. What is Mercury South Holdings? I asked, my voice hoarse. He shook his head slightly. A company my father created. Off the record. I only found out after my mother died. I was trying to track strange transactions, offshore accounts I'd never opened, in my name. I felt breathless. You think Thomas was hiding money? Not just hiding it, Logan replied, his eyes darkening. He was running. The room was silent. I could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above us, their pale glow washing over the walls. Walls covered in evidence that the man I had lived beside for 15 years was someone I never truly knew. Logan unzipped his backpack and placed a folder on the desk. I found this in my mother's files. Inside were letters, scanned passports, and records of wire transfers for Mercury South Holdings to countries like Panama, Cyprus, Switzerland. I reached under my sweater and touched the sapphire pendant resting against my chest. The cold metal pulsed under my fingertips, like a warning. Everything was connected. Thomas had left me the key, but it wasn't to help me understand him. It was to make me choose, keep pretending, or pry open the coffin of truth myself. I looked at Logan. I need the necklace. He nodded. I'll go with you. I wasn't sure why I agreed. Maybe because I didn't want to go alone. Maybe because there was no one else left to trust. Maybe because we had both loved and both lost the same man. I didn't go home right away. After leaving the garage, I needed time to breathe, to think, to try to piece together the shards of memory that had just shattered. I called Claire, my closest friend, the one who had always been there during my worst moments, never once asking why. Less than 20 minutes later, I was sitting on her sofa, hands wrapped around a mug of herbal tea I wasn't drinking. The sapphire necklace lay silently on the coffee table between us, like a living thing, waiting to erupt. You don't have to say anything until you're ready, Claire whispered. But I was ready, and once the words started flowing, about the garage, about Logan, about the will, about something called Mercury South Holdings, Claire didn't interrupt. She just listened, quietly, until finally she reached for my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. The next morning, Logan pulled up in a silver sedan. Claire insisted on coming along. I'm not letting you open your dead husband's secret safe without a witness, she declared, throwing on her trench coat like we were walking into a spy thriller. Thomas's office was on the 14th floor of a sleek glass tower downtown. I'd asked about it once. He said, just a secondary office for private meetings. Nothing important. And I believed him. Logan scanned his ID card at the security checkpoint. The glass doors slid open with a quiet hum. You're listed as a co-owner, he said softly. Since when? I asked. My mom said since I turned 18. We didn't speak again until the elevator doors opened. The office was a block of ice. Glass desk, white walls, black chairs. No family photos, no trace of warmth. The scent of cologne hung faintly in the air, something sharp and unfamiliar. Not the woody scent Thomas used at home, but something colder. Distant. Logan pointed at an abstract painting hanging behind the desk. The safe's behind that. I pulled the necklace from my bag. My hands trembled as I twisted the tiny knob behind the sapphire. Click. A hidden compartment popped open, revealing a sliver of metal, thin like a SIM card, engraved with numbers. Logan entered the code into the keypad. A beep, then a soft click, and the safe door creaked open. Inside, there was no money, no passports, no burner phones, no gold, just a thick stack of documents, a black USB drive, a small wooden box, and a silver key with a tag labeled, Bank Safe Deposit, Federal Trust. I reached for the wooden box first. I opened the lid. Inside was a ring. Not my wedding ring. Not Logan's mother's either. A small, elegant ring, engraved with the words, "In, always." Not V. Not me. "And who is in?" Claire whispered, as if afraid to break the stillness. Oh my God, was Isabel's real name Natalie? I froze. There was still so much I didn't know. And maybe Thomas never intended for me to know it all. I didn't go back to the old house. Not because I was afraid, but because I no longer belonged there. The armchair where I used to read, the porcelain dishes I polished every weekend, even the bedside lamp that stayed on whenever Thomas was away, were now just props in a play I no longer had a role in. I returned to Claire's and packed everything that was left into a single small suitcase. The USB drive was handed to Marcus, the only lawyer I still trusted. He backed up every file, financial records, asset transfers, shady agreements, everything Thomas had left behind, sharp as a double-edged knife. Do you want to press charges? Marcus asked. No, I replied. I just want safety and freedom. I left a short note for Logan. Live honestly. Don't repeat your father's cycle. As for Rachel, I had no words for her. She would have to live with the ghost she created. A week later, I left Charleston. No phone calls, no goodbyes. Around my neck hung the sapphire necklace. Not a symbol of love anymore, but the artifact of a nightmare finally closed. I came to Colorado, where no one knew my name. A small house at the foot of the mountains. A new name, a new life. No longer the widow of Thomas Carter. Just Vivian, the one who survived.